Good evening. Welcome to our interview this evening with Matt Kanealii-Kleinfelder. He's currently the incumbent for Hawaii County Council District 5, and he's decided to run for another 2-year term. Conducting our interviews tonight will be Michaela Cucci and Phil Barnes. And before we get started, I'd like to just give you some information about HULI PAC, and then we'll get started. HULI PAC, we're a group of grassroots community advocates volunteering our time to HULI PAC. Many of us have witnessed during oral testimonies the problem of being the minority voice, observing seated representatives voting against the āina or the majority of testifiers. The majority rule currently allows the continuation of colonial structures, corporate rules, and methods over Ike Hawaii for āina and its people to thrive. We must collectively understand the individual power we carry as Hawai'i Island residents by getting involved. Our first question?
Yeah, I'll start things off here. Yeah, Councilman, what do you see as the most pressing issue in District 5 right now, and what plans do you have for addressing it?
Good question, Phil. Thank you very much. I've thought about this for a while now. I came into office. Some of our most pressing safety concerns or concerns for our district were getting more police officers, addressing some of our major roadways, private roadways, abandoned vehicles, and I've addressed all of those in my past terms. I think the biggest issue that faces our district now is the increasing density in our area. We had the eruption. We've had a number of disasters, and the current insurance rates following those disasters have pushed more folks up into District 5, which is really the Kea'au to Ainaloa to Volcano area. The infrastructure that we currently have, our roadways, our water, our sewer, whether it's water spigots, non-existent sewer, all of these things are being impacted heavily by the transition of folks coming here. We're also deemed the last affordable place in Hawaii to build. We have been for a long time, which is driving a huge spike in home ownership, which is great. We need more homes for local people, but our infrastructure was never designed to handle that. One of my big pushes was to be able to have public funding or county funding be applied towards private roads, so we can begin addressing the major roadways into our major private subdivisions, whose road ownership is owned by the private entities within those communities, dues paid by each community member, and not accessible to public funding. So the recent change through Bill 82, which was of my own drafting, and much mahalos to our legislative research branch for helping me get that across the finish line, and to the whole council for passing that bill, begins to open up funding sources for private roadways, which addresses our infrastructure issues, and we can start to address some of the major things that have impacted our residents since the beginning of statehood. So density, Phil, I believe that is one of the pressing issues that we have on top of a number of the issues, but that is my current issue I'm going to be addressing. And you can address that anywhere from land use. We have our general plan review coming up. We have a lot of pin-to-pin clearing that is happening. We have affordable housing projects that are moving. There's just a number of ways we can begin to address density that are ongoing within the county. And I think that's our next major undertaking.
Thanks for that. I had a quick question to interject. I've noticed over the last few years, starting with some of the hurricanes and then the fire in Pauilo and subsequent fire in Maui, it seems like our emergency preparedness is woefully inadequate. It doesn't seem like we have adequate safe shelters. Our communication system tends to break down. Do you think that maybe that should be prioritized? And, is there funding available to, provide those services for people when there is an emergency.
Yes, Jeff. We have things called resilience hubs that we've been standing up, and some of these have been in place long before the term got coined. And these are just communities coming together to have discussions to know how to handle emergencies, because as we all know, the community reacts first, then government follows. And like we've seen post-eruption, or we still have $50 million sitting in accounts that is yet to be spent because we're holding it to address any matches for county funding that are required for major projects. Whether I agree with that or not, we'll leave on the table. To the way that we are seeing response in Lahaina, it is always the community who responds and acts first. And so enabling our community to better respond is something that I'm always helping to get done. The civil defense has been doing civil defense agency has been doing massive amounts of work to make sure that we can connect to people in times of emergency, that our sirens that aren't working are getting activated and turned on by the state, that we have proper planning in place. And we have a number of plans, and there's always a disconnect somewhere, but the reality is we have a huge amount of plans for when something happens. How do we react? Government always responds, but it takes time. And so enabling the community to be the first response in a disaster while government comes in to fill in all the holes and prop up community, that's how I see this working in going forward. I hope that it's not in our lifetime. We've had so many in the past few years. It just has been one event after another. But given the way of the world, climate change, and all the things that we're seeing, I would expect that we'll be facing a number of natural emergencies. I do feel like our major agencies, civil defense, public works, highways, these folks are really good at what they do. And it's more just ensuring that we can help community and be there when it happens and be better prepared, but also use the plans we have existing in our back pockets to make sure that we respond in a positive manner. And I cannot highlight this enough. We have so much funding left over from the 2018 lava flow that is yet to be spent. That money should have gone directly into community to fix the problems that we have, and it has not. I don't say that lightly. That has been, I've pointed out in our budget hearings, I pointed out in our lava recovery meetings, the money is still sitting in our county coffers. That is 6 years sitting. And that needs to change. That's the way we address recovery, is getting that money into our community hands and letting good things happen.
Thank you. Michaela.
Serving council member, where do you see room for improvement when it comes to collaborating with each other to get things done?
Michaela, good question. Who, as far as collaborating with who?
Just among fellow council members.
We are limited by sunshine law. So anything that we do cannot be more than 2 members at a time. 3 members constitute sunshine law violation. It's not that we can't meet and talk. It's that we can't discuss board business. So communicating amongst amongst our council members is very important. It's good to have those strong relationships. This year, I have seen a really amazing body of council members come together. It's a really nice transition. I feel like there hasn't been a time when I've seen a solid majority do something with just that political pressure. It's more, this is 9 individual minds making a consensus that makes sense for the voters. And I think that's the most beautiful thing you can see in government. Anytime you see a hands down decision being done by, a block, even when it doesn't make sense, that's always leave room for questions. So right now, the decisions that I'm watching at council always seem to be a very healthy, balanced discussion, which means for the community that you're seeing 9 people speak to their community and make decisions for the community in a very healthy way. And it's been a really nice transition between some of the past councils and then this current council. So does that answer your question? Did I kind of hit on the things you're looking for? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, Councilman. I'm sure we're going to have more questions later on about affordable housing, but before you can even talk about housing, do you support rezoning of ag land, which virtually all of your district is, to residential or commercial lands?
I think the idea of rezoning needs to be healthily balanced against the benefits it would offer. I mean, if you're talking about a community center or a town center, establishing some commercial properties next to the highway where you have a lot of folks using it, okay. If you're talking about taking some of the massive subdivisions we have that are zoned agricultural 3 and subdividing that, again, tying back into that density issue, without any of the proper infrastructure, I think we're headed in a bad direction. What I've come to understand from our planning department and all the discussions we've had at council regarding rezoning. Rezoning has to be done smartly. It needs to be done in areas that can support increased density in an area. And so looking at Puna, we don't have the infrastructure to support rezoning, let's say an Ag 3 into an Ag 1. And once you start one, if you allow that to happen in one area, you've then opened up the allowance for property surrounding it to do the same thing. And you can see the domino effect that would happen, because yes, it's very lucrative to do development, but it has to be in balance with what we need, let's say for affordable housing, like you mentioned, and what can be supported by the infrastructure, roads, water, you know. I mean, for us in Puna, it's a lot of spigots. That's how we get our water. If it's not from the sky, if we have a heavy drought and you increase density, with the spigots we have barely handle the folks that we have now. The water hauling companies are calling saying we need more access. If we increase density, those problems just get compounded. So, yes to smart town centers, yes to areas that really make sense where you have a lot of things happening, commercial centers, things like that. No to some of the bigger outlying areas where we just can't handle the capacity. A lot of things need to be fixed before we can go to increasing density in agriculture areas like Puna.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next
Yep.
question.
My next question is, what do you see as the most pressing issue facing Native Hawaiians in Hawaii County? And what will you do about it?
That is a good question. I would say this. One, government needs to learn how to listen to our Native Hawaiians and really take their comments and their thoughts to heart. And I say that because just in a recent meeting, we had a discussion about the way we perceive things and how we are as human beings. You know, we'll leave it at that because it was more in depth, but that's your high level, what I can share. Okay. But what came out of it was different ways of feeling, and as expressed by one person in the group, Native Hawaiians feel things differently. There's different ways of perception that are felt by different folks. So with that kind of laying the groundwork, we need to be aware, government needs to be aware when it comes to listening of how to and what is being requested by the community. And we have decades worth of not listening. And now we moved into listening, but I can't say that listening always equals the action that we're looking for. So listening is one. Inviting people to the table to have the discussion and being open to what's said, not just listening so you can reply. 2, we really need to work on opening up Hawaiian homelands. DHHL, as one of the great people who have spoken to me over the years, Mr. Jonathan Schur, has described Hawaiian homes as being the most beneficial form of affordable housing that we can build as government. Why? Because it's doing 2 things. It's putting Native Hawaiians in homes, and it's using existing land for affordable housing in a way that completely benefits local families. I really do have concerns about the push for affordable housing and the way that it's being handled. I cannot stress that enough. I mean, yes, we need housing, but it needs to be done intelligently, and it needs to benefit local people. So from my end right now, We got local families who we're building affordable housing for. But if that affordable housing isn't coming into the, $100,000 to $300,000 range, it's not attainable for most of our local families. And a lot of us already work 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet. So we also have the most land holdings of Department of Hawaiian Homelands is right here on our island. So we have the ability to create a massive amount of affordable housing for Native Hawaiian families, get people off the list and into homes, and it's not happening. So if you were to ask me, what would I do? That's how I would do it. That's, as was expressed by Pat Herney from Habitat for Humanity, the best thing we can do for our community is build equity in local families, and that is land and home ownership.
Thank you. Next question, Phil.
Yeah, Matt, climate change is an issue that's, on everybody's minds these days. And Hawaii's top emitting sector is transportation. And particularly, like on Highway 130 every day when you see those long lines of cars, I mean, you could traveling at a snail's pace, you could imagine what's being pumped out. What ideas do you have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation section?
That's a big question, Phil, and you only gave me 3 minutes to answer. Yes, we've all seen the impacts of climate change. As a renewable energy, I'm not going to say expert. I was in the renewable energy field for about 10 years before I came to the council. I put solar on a lot of homes and businesses across the island. And since I've come in, I've been pushing that hard. We need more PV in government buildings. We need to move towards an electrification of fleet. And that for us means some of our smaller vehicles that we use every day for commuting for our county workers. But also getting to your point about state, not county, but state highway 130 on Eva stretch and the morning and afternoon commutes, which are horrible. And I am working to address that. But we need to get our buses that serve those areas electrified. And we're working on that. The GE tax, that 0.5% increase that went into effect a few years ago, it sunsets in 2030, which means it can go away. We could renew it if we wanted to as a county. Main point is that is roughly $65 million this year. That $65 million goes directly into mass transit. Mass transit has been purchasing buses, and through our efforts as a council, and especially coming from my office, I have pushed hard on them to change their RFPs, which is where we request equipment and bids for, to start looking at hydrogen and electric buses, which moves us away from the diesel and into electric. The other half of that then that comes in the question always is, well, how are you going to charge a bus? And that funding is also going to be used for looking at how do we build smarter infrastructure so we have charging stations, and which also leads us into hopefully getting to a point where we really start looking at some new and alternative methods for our mass transportation, smaller or micro transit, like taxis and that kind of thing that can pick up 3 or 4 people, do it quicker in a smaller community using electric or hydrogen cars. Another aspect I've really been working hard on is making sure that we start working on redundant roadways. We need better and more access ways into and out of our major town centers like Hilo and Kona. I have been working to get Steinbach improved, and they're almost done. That's a major connector for us. We just approved funding for the Puna alternative route study. Unfortunately, there's about 20 years of studying and funding that's happened to date, and we still don't have an alternate route. But my big push is going to be to connect somewhere in the Mountain View area up and over to Saddle Road, which would help alleviate the traffic concerns we're seeing, get people to and from their jobs, to and from Kona faster and easier, and begin to alleviate the stresses we already see on Eva stretch in the morning and in the afternoon. So I think those are some of the major ways we can look at adapting our mass transportation, as well as looking at our routes themselves to help people get to and from.
Okay. This would be a good time for me to interject to get your opinion on some of the, it's a state issue, but it kind of involves counties as well. There's several waste to fuel bills that they're always attempting to put through the Senate and the House. And most of the time they're just disguised as clean fuel bills. They're all about burning biofuel, and the biotech industry and the fossil fuel industries always support these bills. And it seems like it's just an endless loop of these bills, attempts by these industries to garner support. So I'm wondering, would you support a resolution to have the state study clean, non-burn ways to meet the needs of each energy consumption sector?
Say it one more time. Say what is the content of the resolution, Jeff?
It would be for the state to study clean, non-burn ways to meet the needs of each energy consumption sector.
Well, yes, of course. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll leave it at that.
Simple answer. Okay. Next question, please. I forget.
Question
Michaela?
has to do with food security and agriculture. So if Hawaii is cut off from continental resources for an extended period of time due to a natural or human-caused disaster, Hawai'i Island cannot feed its residents without food imports. So what is your definition of food security and or sovereignty? And what are some of your ideas on how we could support and contribute to our food sovereignty?
That's a great question. I don't think we put nearly enough money into agriculture or energy in agriculture. I mean, before contact, there was a thriving population of Native Hawaiians here who had no ships coming in. Now, if we're out of a ship for a week or two, I mean, there's going to be toilet paper riots, water riots, and who knows what comes after that. So to combat that, I think we need to really focus on, from the government end, really starting to fund some of our agricultural initiatives. And this year, there's a food stewardship grant being offered by R&D. It's open right now. We have small business grants that are open to the public right now. There's Moku o Keawe grants that are open right now. These are all coming from R&D using the ARPA funding, American Rescue Plan funding that came down from the Biden administration. So good options to look at small amounts of funding. And this is on top of USDA and different funding sources available for farmers. But these are good funding options to get little businesses moving or help with buying equipment, whatever it might be. The other side is, I think people just forgot that you can grow a tremendous amount of food, whether you're in an urban area, whether you're in an agricultural area. A lot of our food goes to waste that's being grown. There's a lot of incentives towards building. What's the one they come and harvest the fruit before it falls, and then they put it to good use or give it to the food basket. There's a lot of shifting towards the food basket becoming basically an operations hub for collecting food, processing that food, and then getting that food back to the public. So there's a lot of these missing links that I think they're being worked on right now. Those will help build our security. But I mean, I cannot highlight enough, if you got a backyard and you grow 30 kalo plants in your backyard, you can you can supplement meals with that. It's not rice, of course, but that's a start. Reminding people and teaching our keiki how to grow their own food, getting our schools back to doing these programs where they're learning how to farm. It's a kind of like training the trainer. You teach the kids how. The kids go home and tell their parents they need to be doing this. Then you get the community and the families going. You're building that community piece back in. People start growing their own food. They remember that it's not difficult. It just takes a little bit of time and energy. Some people don't want to do that though. So that does leave us in a strange place. So as far as sustainability, we need to support our local farmers. We need to really, what I've seen that's helpful for me, because we have chickens here on our property. I grow kalo. We do different fruits and vegetables. We're planting all the time. We're trying to grow up avocado and different citruses. But what's been helpful for me is places like the Ulu Co-op and Kamehameha schools beginning to process. So now as a farmer, small farmer, startup, I know I can take my food somewhere and have it processed, and I can make a little bit of money from that. It helps gets me moving and getting more productive for my community. So.
Okay, next question.
Yeah, this next one, Matt, is totally changing gears here. Talking about the marine environment. Now, lately, the deep sea mine, it seems like the past few months, this has really been becoming more and more of an issue. And it's very much a federal issue. It's a state issue. There's undoubtedly a role for the county in it as well. As a county council, has this come before the county council at all? Is it anything being considered?
Nothing at this point that I know of, as far as deep sea mining. And yeah, I'd have to say, like you stated, more of a federal and a state issue at probably for most of the conversation. Impact on the county, I haven't heard anything about it so far, not even a peep. So either I'm out of the loop, or it just hasn't got to the point of being a county issue yet. But I think good for us to look at. It's always good to know what's coming in and be aware so we can plan properly.
Thank you.
Michaela?
Thank you for the question, Phil. It's good.
My next question has to do with wastewater. So half of the state cesspools, for over 49,000, are on Hawai'i Island. The county has been in violation of the Safe Drinking Water Act and EPA federal rules and regulations since 2010, when the county took over responsibility of the large capacity cesspools at Pahala and Na'alehu. So what do you suggest we do to improve our aging and sometimes non-existent wastewater infrastructure?
Okay, because you mentioned Pahala and what is the other one? Sorry.
Na'alehu.
Sorry. I'm blank. I was thinking Nalehu. I was like, that's not right. Yeah, Pahala and Na'alehu. Those actually are being funded now through the ARPA funding. That was on the latest round of paperwork that we passed. And that's two massive projects that we're going to take on. The EPA consent decree has been going. We have the AOCs that we are having to respond to. We had this discussion at council. The awkward truth is that we are looking at hundreds of millions of dollars worth of work to be done to fix these. I can stop right there and say, I'm supporting those measures, and that we as a county are pushing to fix them because we have to. It's not like we have an option. These have to get fixed. The Supreme Court ruling for Maui and the injection wells really does create an interesting place for all counties now, because we all have to comply. So any of our sites that are considered an injection well, these are potential problems that we're going to be facing as things evolve. We just had a very long discussion at the council regarding Honokohau Harbor and the way that we have been emitting some of our wastewater. And that is in now more the legal court. So I'm just going to leave that one there. Many of you are familiar with where we stand with that. So the awkward truth is we got to throw a whole lot of money at this, which means we are either pulling bonds or we're taking massive amounts of financing, or we find more creative ways to do private treatment of wastewater, to address some of the concerns that we're facing. On the smaller end, we have the state goal of having all of our existing cesspools being converted to septic tanks. I think that is by 2050. We still, even if we did transition all of those, then all that waste will come to our wastewater treatment facility to process. I'm saying that because I am pushing hard on the administration right now to start a pilot project that would begin taking the sludge from our wastewater and processing it into a fertilizer that our farmers can use. That's a really nice way of touching on the sustainability for agriculture piece, but we're also paying close to about $1 million a year to process that sludge and haul it to the west side to dump it in our landfill. So there's a lot of neat pilots happening right now, and I really do feel like across the at least across the county and the state, but I'd say across the world, people are starting to kind of open their minds to these really new creative ways, maybe not new, okay, but creative ways of addressing some of our waste issues like wastewater. That good? Looking for more?
Next question.
Yeah, the next area we're going to touch on here is government and ethics. Boy, the multi-page article on all this stuff that's going on with lobbyists and what have you, and Honolulu passing out all this money to legislators really hit the paper today in a big way. So a couple different things here. So do you support publicly financed elections? Because we have done it at the county level before. It seems like at the state level, I mean, we think we're going to get it and then it keeps dying. So you have any ideas for how we might be able to move it across the finish line and get publicly financed elections?
No, we gotta get those bills through, and make sure that it happens. I like the idea. I think a lot of the time, and you hear it said, and it is true to a point, but the incumbents have a tremendous amount of power. County-wise, I think things rotate fairly quickly, and we're smaller. But at the state level, you have incumbents that are seated for 20 or 30 years. It is hard. It is hard to wage a good campaign in that arena without having a lot of funding. And so, publicly funded elections, I support the idea. That was your first question of one, two. What you got?
Well, what about publicly funded at the county level?
As far as I remember, when you sign your paperwork, you are able to apply for public funding. It's a match. I think it's only for campaign contributions that are less than $100 up to a certain threshold. And that's available to every member who runs. And I think that's helpful in that aspect. I'm thinking about the last few years of elections, and I'm not sure if I'm answering your question correctly here, Phil, but we ran campaigns really utilizing our own funding. And we had a lot of small contributions. I had a few very good contributions from some really good folks in the community. But our county council campaigns locally, they're very small. I mean, you're looking at campaign contributions of less than $50,000. Only in the past few years did I see some that were extremely questionable, where you had a lot of money coming in from outside of our island and outside of our state to support a certain candidate. And that was extremely concerning. And we may see situations like that again in the coming years. But for me, I think I'm small as far as how we run a campaign, and we're very home-based, and this is our home, so we take care of it. As far as getting people into office and them needing funding, I support the idea. It needs to be there so we can help get good people off the ground and seeking a higher office. That's a great thing to do. And just for you, I didn't have a chance to read that article. Sorry.
Okay. It's pretty appalling.
Mahalo. Next question, Michaela.
My next question has to do with women's rights and Planned Parenthood. How would you help ensure that women on Hawai'i Island have access to birth control and/or abortion services if needed?
I think the good beginning of that question is I have an amazing wife and I have 2 daughters. I raise strong daughters, and probably more so my wife raises strong daughters. So with that in mind, yes, I support getting them birth control and helping our females in our community do everything that they need to do. I mean, there's an old saying, behind every good man is an extremely solid woman. That always holds true for me. But I mean, you can go the other way. Some of our most amazing leaders we've seen around the planet are female. So we have to embrace that into our community. As far as getting birth control, I work with a number of health organizations, Kumukai Health and Wellness. These organizations come in and they request funding for different programs. Anything like this would be a yes from our office. any kind of legislation to this effect would be a yes from my office at this point in time. So appreciate the question, and I think it's just I cannot express well enough that without my amazing wife, I wouldn't be where I am today. She helps me maintain a level set and stay balanced and make good decisions. And I always lean on her when I get the hard question, like some of the ones Phil's asked and you've asked so far, is, how could I answer that better? What perspective am I missing? I lean to my wife, who's always there. So thank you for the question.
Phil?
Yeah, this next question deals with performance-based contracting, which is an example of a private-public partnership to come up with some innovative solutions which can be found outside the realm of strictly government. And this often can happen at the county level as well without interfering with the county employment contracts. So are you familiar with such arrangements elsewhere, and are you open to proposals which seek to solve our personnel and administrative limitations? More specifically, one of them that's come up was, would you welcome proposals from outside governments to enhance water recycling operations of both public and private water systems on our island?
Short answer, yes, it would. There's an extreme, but let me go back a little bit. Every year we look at the budget. We have $882 million worth of budget this year. That's what we're budgeting for. I know every year, roughly 65% of our budget is salaries, wages, and benefits. So everyone going, what is government doing? Our money doesn't do anything. Well, I can tell you right now, if you get $800 million, $600 million, roughly 550 to $600 million is going out the door to salary and wages and benefits. That's just to cover the cost of running everything. The remaining part is what we do projects with. So we need to be able to look at these different public-private partnerships because there is a cost savings. And I have to say, in balance without going against any existing union covered jobs, because that's important. We have a lot of good workers who are covered by our bargaining units. Without taking away from those job opportunities, we're looking at public-private partnerships that begin to take care of some of the issues that we have that in some cases maybe we shouldn't be trying to handle. It may be something that's done better by a third party than by the government itself. We've talked about wastewater so far. We've talked about solid waste. We have composting and mulching happening. These are all different examples of public-private partnerships that are occurring. Some for the good, some that need work. So yes, I do support public-private partnerships, Mr. Phil.
Thank you.
Thank you. Michaela?
Next question has to do with our foster care system. The foster system is currently overwhelmed, and statistics show that 25% of youth that were in the foster care system end up houseless within 2 years of exiting the foster care system, which contributes to wider issues in our county, like houselessness, drug abuse, sex trafficking, and more. So what are some of your ideas on what we could do to resolve this?
So one of the major things I took on in the last 2 years was beginning with the help of Dr. Dominique, I like to call her, from Arizona State University, was setting up what we call a HEAT unit here in Hawaii County. That stands for Hawaii Exploitation and Trafficking. The point of that unit is more to create a multi-jurisdictional team that addresses trafficking, youth challenges, the different challenges that our youth face here in Hawaii, and really trying to get a grasp on that. Our police department's done some amazing work doing stings for child predators and for sex buyers, and they have done I think 2 stings in the past 2 years that have been just carried out very well. And it's always quiet until they make the arrest, and then it goes public. So looking forward to what they do. So I began that unit really just to understand and wrap my head around what was going on in our community. The more I learned, I mean, it's heart-wrenching. It really is, to listen to the stories that our service providers are telling. And we began our quest there. We looked to find holes in the system that we can help, just sometimes just through having discussion, or doing sign wavings, or creating safe spaces for a keiki to use in times of need. Those conversations are ongoing. I've been working with our Office of Housing and Community Development for a number of years now, trying to lock down a space for our youth to use that is a safe space. So you're having trouble, you're having issues finding a space in Kona and in Hilo that our youth can access, that acts as a, you know, just a quiet place where they can gather their thoughts, recover from a situation, find services, link to our providers, whatever, and however that needs to happen. That's been this ongoing discussion. Unfortunately, we haven't nailed it down yet. But a lot of our nonprofit service providers have been doing this work in the background for years. YWCA, Salvation Army, they have different homes and different facilities for different folks in different ranges. The one thing that does worry me is our youth are taken care of, but the moment they turn 18, they age out of the system, and now they're adults. And as you and some of us may know, just because you're 18 doesn't mean you're an adult. Sometimes the brain's still, you know, formulating. So trying to address the needs of our kids after they age out of the system has been another interesting aspect that was brought up, and finding solutions for that. And it's really not easy. It's finding a place, it's finding funding, it's supporting our nonprofits, and I do all of these things all of the time. And I can't point to one, but I can say we've been working diligently to address this in our community, and I will continue. So I hope that is helpful. And if you want to touch bases with me on that later, I'm more than open to having a conversation with you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Phil, last question.
Okay. Yeah, we've talked about it. You've alluded to affordable housing before, and I really like your idea of building out homelands as being an excellent way to get some more affordable housing going. But do you have any other ideas for solutions to affordable housing crisis that could take place in Puna or, you know, throughout the county?
I think in Puna, I'm going to limit us down to, you know, we have a lot of land here. We lack the infrastructure. Like I said, I won't get into that. Finding spaces where we have good access to major roadways that doesn't create, you know, issues within density, and then starting some small, like, you know, like what Habitat for Humanity does, where they do a self-help build. Those are great. You know, that's real solid work for local families in putting up housing. A lot of housing projects are coming. Most of those are in the works in Hilo and in Kona. There's been a lot of discussion regarding affordable housing, and there will be. The governor's emergency declaration opened up the floodgates. And so we're going to see a lot of movement in affordable housing. It's going to center around a lot of workforce housing. So where you're putting people next to where the jobs are. And so Puna lacks in jobs. We know that. That's why the highways are busy in the morning, Phil, because we're all going to and from work. The schools are in Hilo. You know, a lot of everything that happens in our town center. So affordable housing projects are happening in Kona and Hilo. We have some little ones popping up in Puna here and there. The other side of it is getting more jobs in our rural areas and these town centers that we're building. And so you're creating the workforce, having jobs there, not having to move, not needing to move houses, not needing to commute, getting more jobs into our communities. So we're addressing it kind of you're addressing it in two different directions. It's going to come. Housing is going to come. Development is going to come. It always does. It has been for years. It's extremely lucrative. But I just from my limited knowledge on planning, that housing needs to and is being pushed into areas that can handle density, where you can have more dense zoning types. So you can build multi-dwelling houses, you can build vertical, and start to really put impactful affordable housing in where it's needed. That's usually close to resources, and it's got to be where it can be supported. So Puna, you know, we're very rural. We lack a lot of the things that we need. We don't have sewer. We don't have water for a lot of our areas. So not restrictions, but there are some limitations on affordable housing in Puna currently.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we are out of time. Thank you, Councilman, for joining us this evening. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Phil and Michaela as well. One thing I'd like to do, or we like to do at HULI, is encourage everybody to vote. It's one thing that you can do that has a profound influence. We have small communities. Talk to your friends and family about the different candidates and how you feel about them and what the issues are that you want them to support, and get involved. I mean, that's really what it's all about. At HULI PAC, we are building something that Hawaii has never seen before, a slate of pono leaders. For more information, please log in to hulihigh.com. That's HULIHI.com. Everybody have a great evening.